Hello everyone, and I hope you're doing extremely well. So, I thought I'd have a really cool video to bring for you today, but it turns out it wasn't to be, in that I couldn't actually make the video, as I'll tell you about that in a minute, and secondly, I couldn't actually find out any information to put in the video, or very little information, so that didn't help. So I'll tell you what I've got so far, and I'll have to come back and try making the video again in the summer or something. So, I live, here is England, good old England. I live somewhere about roughly where I am putting there, literally there, Ely, with Alison and Alison's mother, and we came down to here this weekend, Felixstowe, where my parents are, and just off slightly north of Felixstowe where my sister is, and that's where we're living at the moment for 3 days. And so we thought we'd take the opportunity to go and see the Atomic Weapons Research Establishment at Orford Ness, as it's the kind of thing that I like. And I know you guys are going to like as well. It's just cool, right? It's the kind of thing you just don't get in England. Alison wasn't too happy about it, but well, yeah, we got our way. And so we went there today. Got there about 3 p.m. It's harder to get to than I thought, and we just couldn't get to it. It turns out it's actually on an island. Well, technically a peninsula, but more or less an island. And so you just can't get to it. It's surrounded by a massive natural moat. Which is very frustrating. There is a way to get to it on Saturdays, and it is Saturday today. I researched that, but it turns out the last ferry, the last National Heritage ferry, is at 2 o'clock, or just before that, and so we missed it, and I was really pissed off. So I thought, let's start, while I've got a tiny bit of time, let's start geeking up on it and finding up about it, okay? So I got to Orford Ness here. This is where we get to. We can get to the quay there, and then we got stuck. And this here is Orford Ness, the Atomic Weapons Research Establishment. And well, actually, the island is what I'm kind of shaping there. You see where I'm going with that? That's Long Island, and this is the meat of the island here. This is the atomic weapons part here, where it's a kind of lighter colour, and here is the radar part here. As it turns out, I'm not sure what that bit was there. It's been used by the MOD, the Ministry of Defence, our armed forces basically, since I think the 1920s, and this is going to play into what we're going to look at tomorrow actually, which is even more interesting really. In the 1920s, it was all about finding a way of detecting and shooting down incoming aircraft. You know, we didn't have missiles, we didn't have radar. As well as navigation, because the First World War had happened, and we wanted a way, and the game changer of aeroplanes had appeared on the First World War for the first time. We wanted a way to detect those things, and there was no such thing as radar at the time. And this, and slightly down the road where we're going tomorrow, is where the very world's first radar was developed. And we've got some of that here as well. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting a bit distracted here, but the reason I'm saying that is because we've got this all muddled into this one big MOD site here. We've got the atomic weapons here, we've got conventional weapons here, I believe, and we've got the various radar sites there. Okay, so if we have a look around here on the Google Earth, or whatever this thing's called, what we could see really easily from the quayside there were these buildings here, known as the pagodas. Oh, look, you've got them there at the top left, look. And there's almost like there's kind of like a hi-hat structures here, balanced on stilts. And you think, looking at them, what the hell could they be? Why would you have these massive, deliberately heavy, 1,000-ton roofs on these stilt legs? What could that possibly be for? That immediately spiked my interest, as well as other buildings. And they are all... if you imagine these buildings, what I'm going to do is someone's flown a drone over here and put the footage up. So on the what do you call it? The description of this video, I'll put his link up so you can go and have a look at it from a high res from the air, and you can see all of these buildings have kind of got big sand mounds built up to them like big bunkers. And so it's been a real mystery to work out what these things do. We've got buildings, we've got pagodas here, test buildings 1, 2, and 3, I believe, and I think it's 4 and 5 there. I'm not actually sure. But working out what actually happened here has been a real mystery. I've read through about the first 20 links on Google search that relate to this, and no one actually knows what went on here. Each website seems to put their own kind of theories forward, but I've seen no actual concrete evidence, which is interesting. So we're going to have to do a bit of speculation and see what they say. And also, I'd love to know what this is. You see this little circle here, and there's a high building there. You can see by the shadow. I'd love to find out what that is. and the lighthouse there. And where's the radar gone? Now look at this. The black mist, I think it was called. When that focuses in. Now, how do I get this looking a bit prettier? Let me try 3D. You can see that? This is what, a mile something? I can't see the scale anywhere. No, it's 100 meters. That is about just over a kilometer there. And you can see these kind of lanes sweeping out, and these towers, these detection towers or transmitting towers here. Okay, so that's our view from the air. And the best website I found is this one here, what really happened at Orford Ness. So let me just have a drink and we'll have a quick read through it. So here is the view from the quayside where we were looking at it from. But here you've got a kind of low angle lens, so you've got a really nice zoom, which is good. So Orford Ness is a 10-mile long shingle spit. 10 mile, really?
Yeah, Shingle. It's a prison on Shingle Street.
Prison?
That's where Jeffrey Archer was. There's a prison on Shingle Street Beach. Holsby Prison.
Okay, well that's 10 miles. It says it's 10 miles. Oh, 2 kilometres there. Yeah, so it's about 16 kilometres, about 10 miles long, this shingle. How interesting. Okay. So on the Suffolk coast, it's one of the most extraordinary places in Britain. It certainly is. Its environment, part natural, part man-made. Check that I'm recording. I am. Provides a perfect and, in places, rare habitat for an enormous variety of flora and fauna. Now that's great. However, that's not my deal. That's when I'm not here for that. I'm here for the nuclear bombs. But more than that, that's my sister in the background. You'll just have to.
Sorry.
I'll see if I can phase that out with the noise killer. But more than that, for the greater part of the 20th century, it was one of the most secret experimental military sites in the country. Here, armed guards, not commonplace in Britain, that's true. We don't have guns in Britain. I know that's weird for you lot, but discouraged outside interests as boffins. Boffin's an interesting thing. That word here, I don't know if you get that in America, but in England it's what we call a geek. Geek is a boffin. Okay. Now the interesting thing is, as I found from reading down here, and I don't know why I'm telling you this now, but boffin came from these guys who were working here at Orford Ness on the atomic bombs. Cool, right? Work to challenge and change the course of events, or we know not what. That doesn't make sense to me, but okay. Specialist unique structures were built to experiment, test and conceal, and then it having been judged redundant, Orford Ness was abandoned, as you know all MOD sites are eventually. Now, the gaunt relics of its clandestine past scattered across its often bleak landscape like fading signposts to our recent history, while the flourishing wildlife gets on with survival, and that's absolutely right. So this place basically hasn't been touched by man since it stopped in 1973, which is getting on for 50 years, which is pretty cool. So, okay, let's keep going. Orford Ness is a fantastic and unusual place to visit. It is not exactly beautiful, yes it is, and the juxtaposition of crumbling, ugly, not ugly, man-made structures with nature makes it seem as though the landscape has somehow been violated. Yet it has also had an alluring sense of mystery and wilderness. Its geomorphology, not sure what that means, from prehistoric times to the present has created a dynamic, ever-changing landform, largely through the process of longshore drift, whereby material eroded further up the east coast, thus just north of the coast of Adelborough, which we went to, including part of the town, has been drowned over the years. It has, because when we were there were pictures of people in rowing boats, because it keeps getting flooded. Interesting. While the Ness means promontory or projecting ridge. Has narrowed and lengthened. It was certainly very long now. The fortunes of the medieval port of Orford once benefiting from the shelter at the so the Orford port medieval, that must have been the key where we were at, once benefiting from the shelter of the spit, declined as the deposits of shingle and other material extended and shifted, making the approaches to the harbour more difficult. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's all about the natural side of it, which I'm sure is beautiful, but that's not what I'm really here for. So I'm just going to float. Here's an interesting bit. We did get to the Orford Castle here, and had a look. we're going to have any pictures there. That we went up there. It turns out my legs just aren't up for it yet. I've still got, well, I've got permanent blood clots, annoyingly. So I could get up these steps here and just round to the ticket office, kind of round the back, but then my legs gave up. So unfortunately, I couldn't bring you any cool pictures of that. So never mind. Let's get out of there, back to here. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, it's talking about the same stuff. Lighthouse, Trinity House. Okay. First submarine. On 1930, on 30th of June 1853, one of the first submarine telegraph cables was laid. Since when were submarines invented then? I thought they were just pre-World War One. Have I missed something? Dickhead. Sometimes I'm a knob. In fact, I'm always a knob. I thought it meant submarine as in the boat. I'm a retard. Submarine cables, okay. Let's ignore I ever said that. We'll cut that out. Any traditional use of Ness by locals, blah, 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 blah. Okay, here we go. Any traditional use of the Ness by locals ended when the military moved in 1913. The War Department, now the Ministry of Defence, acquired a large part of Orford Ness for the construction of an airfield. Didn't know that. Is that Bentwaters, maybe? Right, well, that's something I should talk to you about as well. This whole area, in fact, this pokey bit in East England is called East Anglia. It's where I've always lived. And this is, if you're into aviation or war or anything like I am, well, you know what I mean, the war, historical war, is a really interesting place because this is where World War II and the Cold War have been based from in terms of England. Okay, this is just peppered and still is peppered with American bases. We've got Thetford there, we've got RAF Milton, Lakenheath there. That's where the 493rd F-15 Grim Reapers are, and the 49th, correct me if I'm wrong, F-15Es there. You've got Mildenhall with the KC-135s there. You've got RAF Alconbury, which is now shut, and flipping heck, the other one that's just shut. And that's just that little area where I live, next to Ely. You know, this is how lucky we are. We are peppered by these Cold War bases. And where we are now at the moment, even in this tiny little area of the country, we've got this one, Bentwaters. And I wanted to make a video about that yesterday. I tried to get in there. It's a Cold War relic base. And it is full, I don't know if you can see anything, with Cold War airframes. They don't fly anymore, but F4 Phantoms, Buccaneers, Harriers, all kinds of awesome planes like that. And I wanted to go in and make a little documentary about them, but they said no, so they wouldn't let me in. Very frustrating. They didn't trust me. So maybe we'll have to petition to get me in there because there is going to be good stuff in there, you know. Anyway, the point I was making is just 10 miles from here is Bentwaters, big old Cold War base, and then we've got where the radar started, which will go tomorrow. Blast, it's around here somewhere, I've forgotten exactly. I got distracted, didn't I? That happened. That's an airfield. In 1915, the experimental flight section of the Central Flying School transferred there from Uphaven in Wiltshire. By 1918, 600 staff were living and working on it. Wow, 600 people at Orford Ness. The type of work undertaken included testing new aircraft and development of parachutes, bombs, gun sights, aerial combat tactics, aerial and high-speed photography, camouflage and navigation. In the 1920s, the Ness was used as a firing and bomb range by aeroplane and armament experimental establishment based at a nearby Martlesham Heath. Martlesham Heath. I saw a sign for that, but I'm not sure what it actually is. So this is where, I don't think we'll see it in here. I think this is the Scales one, but this place here is peppered with bomb craters. Kind of like when you go and see the NTTR, Nevada testing range. In Nevada, it's got big bomb craters, nuclear bomb craters. This one is peppered with conventional bomb craters. I don't think we're going to see it. So you just have to take my word for it, I believe. Because it's where we dropped our bombs for testing in the First World War on onwards. There was a POW camp on the site in the First World War. Didn't know that. German POWs as well as Chinese Labour Corps personnel constructed flood defences. Chinese Labour... What the hell? Okay, take your word for that. Towards the end of the conflict, a 100-foot span hangar was erected for the new twin-engined aircraft, then under development, and a 600mm gauge military railway was installed to carry stores and equipment and sometimes personnel. A slightly larger 2-foot gauge railway was constructed at the site during the 1960s. I wonder if we'll get to see that when we get to go in. Where is the railway then? Is that the railway? No, it's not the railway. It must be in this section here, because this is the bombing section, if you know what I'm saying. It's got a road. No obvious railway though. I'll have to see if I can find it when I get in. In 1933, a bomb's ballistic building was constructed for the purpose of observing and recording the flight of bombs in order to improve aerodynamics and bomb aiming. This was state-of-the-art stuff, and the building is still there. Is that it there? Which one's that? Which building is that? I'll have to find out. Possibly some of the most significant experiments conducted at Orford Ness took place under the... Can't read it. You know what I mean. You know what it means. I just can't read it for some reason. Off the Ionospheric Research Station. Ionospheric, as in atmosphere. Research Station set up by the brilliant Robert Watson Watt. He's looking at tomorrow, the inventor of radar, in 1935. At a meeting of the Committee of the Scientific Study of Air Defence, it has been suggested to Watson Watt that radiation, actually a death ray, could be used to stop enemy aircraft. So, my understanding is we wanted to stop World War I, showed the immense power of the aircraft, and we needed to find a way of detecting them, B, shooting them down. So there was amazing things, such as the first type of radar didn't use radiation at all. It used sound. It listened by bouncing sound off a huge concrete amplifier to listen for them, and obviously it didn't work. We'll look at that tomorrow. And then when the radiation type of radar came into play, I believe they first wanted the idea they first used it for was to create the death ray, radiation death ray, to shoot aeroplane pilots down that way. Obviously it didn't work. Could be used to stop aircraft. Watson Watt rejected this as impractical with the technology available at the time, but suggested there was potential to use radio waves as a detection system. So the Ionospheric Research Station was a cover for the development of the radio detection system that briefly became RDF, Radio Direction Finding. Oh, and we know all about that, don't we? So that is so that's navigation based rather than detection. Didn't it say detection? Radio is as detection system. So the Ionospheric Research Station cover the development. No, I must be reading that wrong. It's clearly for detecting aircraft from the ground, isn't it? And that we know by its American acronym as radar, radio detection and ranging. I actually didn't know that. How interesting. The first ever purpose-built radar masts were installed at Orford Ness in 1935. Ah, how interesting. Built by Harland and Wolff. Oh, they built the Titanic, didn't they? Of Belfast. They were 250 feet, 76 metres high. Watson Watt's team moved to nearby Ballsy Manor. That's where the first radar was made. That's where we're going tomorrow. From which the chain of stations that would be deployed ahead of the war, World War II, and which played such a defensive role in the Battle of Britain in 1940 was developed. Without the work undertaken at Orford Ness, the history of the world would have been very different. Wow! So, I can't wait to go and get in there now. So that shows how spine-tinglingly awesome this bit is. Look at these huge 250-foot towers here. Now, are they the original from the original RDF, or are these the 1960s Black Mist? I don't know. I get the feeling these were the original 1935 ones, or 33, whatever that said, and they were then later converted to Black Mist, so we'll have to go and have a look at that. Either way, that is pretty much a 1 mile radar site, which is pretty awesome. So that's going to be cool. Right, so we've learnt about that. Next, what are we learning about? Between 1938 and 1959, aircraft lethality and vulnerability trials were undertaken at Orford Ness, assessing the vulnerability of various aircraft to attack with the view of improving protection. One experiment involved shooting at aircraft from all angles with a .303 caliber rifle, one shot at a time, meticulously recording each shot. That's interesting. So they put him on the centre here and blasted rifles at him all day. I could have done that. So that's near the lighthouse. So a big flat area near the light. Oh, that's the circle. It's all coming together. Wasn't it? Look. Look. That's the circle. And there's the lighthouse in the background. That was the aircraft damage testing range. So that's where they would sit. That's where they'd put their Lancaster. And this circle is where they would have the guns mounted then. Look. The guns would be mounted on that circle there at different degrees and fired at the aircraft in the middle. How interesting. I'd love to see some more information about that. And this is as much information as we can get. I mean, the reason I'm really making this is to A, entertain you, and because it's interesting, but also to get you guys talking. Someone out there's got to actually know about this stuff, and it can't still be classified. I mean, it finished in the 1970s, so... And why would it be classified? Shooting bullets at a Lancaster and, a Buccaneer. Stuff can't be classified. We've got to find it. Anyway, during the Second World War, German as well as Allied aircraft were tested. Makes sense. Once the machines had been finished with, airmen would apparently scrounge bits of leather and metal to make souvenirs, belts and cigarette lighters, which they could sell perhaps. Is pretty cool. Inside a building known as the Plate Store, sheets of experimental armour plate were bombarded with projectiles to see what worked and what didn't. Cool. Right, so the Plate Store. When we get in there, we've got to locate the Plate Store. That sounds awesome. In addition to accommodation and testing buildings, there were machine shops, a refrigerator station, a battery shop, photo processing facility, stores, lookouts. This was a big complex. Presumably there was some kind of defence force too, though nothing I have seen so far as mentioned this vital aspect. Perhaps it's taken as obvious. I haven't seen anything that would show us a defence, but I'm super new to this so far. From what I can make out, this was a Royal Air Force facility during World War II, but after 1945, Orford Ness seems to have been handed over to the Royal Aircraft Establishment, RAE, a government research organisation that had various names and roles during its lifetime. In 1953, the Atomics... 1953... That's just before Blue Danube, whatever it's called, isn't it? The Atomic Weapons Research Establishment, AUR, moved in and appears to have had exclusive control of the site from 1959. This is the shadow period. This is the shadow period, and then there's the Cold War. This is what the bit that we're interested in all of it, but this is the bit where no one can seem to find any information out of. This is the shadowy period we know as the Cold War. Despite Britain's crucial contribution to the US-funded Manhattan Project, that's the first nuclear bombs, which produced the world's first nuclear weapons, wartime collaboration in this area ended after the death of President Roosevelt in 1945, when the Americans refused to share further atomic information despite Britain's perilous economic state at the time. Never. And despite the ambitious commitments made by the new Labour government, including the creation of the NHS, that's why kept still alive. In 1946, a secret cabinet committee decided that Britain should pursue its own independent atomic program. Bravo. Very few people, even in government, knew of this decision, and work proceeded in the utmost secrecy. Britain's first atomic bomb was detonated on, this must be the atoll, mustn't it? 3rd of October 1952 on the Montebello Islands off the northwest coast of Australia. Oh, I thought it was the Pacific Atoll. What was it called? Bikini? No. Who's Bikini? Was that? It was us, wasn't it? Anyway, west coast of Australia. Whiskey Echo 177 Alpha nuclear weapon. The WE-177 was a family of UK parachute retarded free-fall nuclear weapons with 3 distinct variants, A, B and C, each of which had a number of delivery and fusing options. The system was developed to provide tactical low-level information capabilities to UK strike aircraft such as the RAF TSR-2, which I'd love to do a video on if I can get some more information. That is a piece of history. And the Oh, I can't remember. N is the Buccaneer. What's the RN, guys? I've completely forgotten. But the B variant was deployed initially. How could a Buccaneer have carried that? Okay, but the B variant was deployed initially during 1966 on Vulcan. That must be the Blue Danube aircraft of the RAF V bomber force as part of the UK Strategic Nuclear Deterrent. WE-177 variants eventually replaced Yellow Sun Mark II and Red Beard weapons in the UK inventory. So we need to do a video about this as well, because I don't know anything about it. So the Yellow Sun, that was the free fall. The Red Beard, so that, right, correct me if I'm wrong here, that was the kiloton, that was the megaton, wasn't it? And what was the Blue Danube? No, was that the missile? And then the Yanks tried to make the superior missile, wasn't it? Right, we're going to have to read about this. Weapons in the UK inventory. Most UK strike aircraft of the period of 1966 to 1988 could deliver all... Did it actually say what the variant C is? It didn't, did it? Was a family of parachute retarded free-fall nuclear weapons, three distinct variants. Delivery. Okay. I think we'll have to read a bit more about this. In its role as a depth bomb, could also be delivered by the naval helicopters of the period 1971 to 1991, when that capability was withdrawn. Did any of that happen? Could be delivered by most UK naval helicopters of the period. So that would be a nuclear bomb for blowing up submarines, I guess. When that capability was withdrawn, the WE-177 weapon was withdrawn from the RAF service at the end of 1998, and all weapons have been dismantled. Wow, didn't know any about that. Anything? Okay. What next? Orford Ness is one of the few places known where purpose-built facilities were created for testing atomic weapons and their components. The Blue Danube, so that's not the missile. So this is precursor to Yellow Sun then, by the sounds of it. Britain's first atomic bomb. Oh, I get so confused. What am I thinking about? Blue... was lowered by crane into a specially constructed pit to be tested. Now here's where it gets a bit ambiguous, which I'll go through in a minute. Tests were designed to imitate the extreme conditions such weapons would be subjected prior to detonation: vibration, high temperatures, shock, G-forces. It has always been maintained that no fissile material, so the atomic part of the bomb material, was involved in the test, but high explosive initiators were present, and any accident could have had devastating consequences. Well, only for people on the Ness. So far as we know, there were no accidents. Of course, it is comforting to read that the buildings were designed to absorb any accidental explosion, allowing gases and other materials to vent and dissipate in the directed or contained manner. In the event of a larger accident, the roofs were designed to collapse onto the building, sealing it with a lid of concrete and shingle. Such tests were remotely controlled. Let's see if we can find a picture of one of the pagodas. Hello, pagodas. There, these are the legendary face of Orford Ness, the pagoda buildings. So we've got a better one, have we? No, not going to get a better one. Let's see. There we go. A little bit better. So I've been told by my uncle, Alison's uncle, that it was with a 200 foot or a 200 metre trench. So I can't find this information anywhere in print, but there's 200 or 200 metre hole down here, concrete lined, and then underneath that was a big chamber which was concrete lined to like 6 metres thick or 20 metres thick or something big, I can't remember. And they would play with the bombs there and do stuff to them. They had centrifuges down there. They had cryogenic, ways of freezing it, ways of heat furnaces, heating the bombs, and stuff like that. And the idea is that if they exploded, then the explosion would come up the shaft. It's the only way it can go to escape, and then push out under the pagoda roof and push these little legs out. And then once the legs were pushed out, this 1,000-ton or whatever it was lid would fall down and trap the blast, contain the blast. But the bit I can't work out is, if you're only testing nuclear bomb initiators, then that's like, what is it? It's like 200 pounds of explosives. So for £200 of explosives, yeah, it's going to blow the shit out of something, but you don't need all this for £200 of explosives. You just need, a big mound of earth, surrounding where this is, and then, £200 of explosive doesn't need all this stuff, in my opinion. So why were these massive buildings made? Did they intend to have fissile material in there, do we think? Saying that, a hydrogen bomb wouldn't be stopped by a 1,000-ton piece of concrete, would it? It would just vaporise it and shoot back up into space. I really don't know. Need some opinions on that, and no one seems to know about this that I have found. So this is interesting stuff. This is one of the most interesting places in England. So we really need to drill down into this a little bit. I intend to ask lots of questions if I ever manage to get there, but I don't know when that's going to be at the moment. Anyway, let's carry on. Bugger. We've just moved all this up, haven't we? Blue Danube. Contained. Lighthouse. Orford Ness also has an experimental rocket range, amazing, to record flight path of air-launched rockets, and in the 1960s, hard target impact facility was built. This tested time delay fuses mounted on rocket-propelled sledge running on rail tracks, launched on a high-density concrete target, so basically a concrete wall. How cool I hope that's there. I just want to run myself down on that sledge and slam into that concrete. That's going to be amazing. It seems that it wasn't just weapons that were tested at Orford Ness. Allegedly, radio detection picked up... Nothing alleged about it, it was. Allegedly, radio detection picked up a Soviet atomic test for the first time from the effect of the explosion in the ionosphere. Cool. Many of the buildings from this time are clearly visible from miles away, notably the distinctive pagodas. Even though this is presumably yesterday's technology, it still looks like something from a sci-fi movie. Yes, it does. And just a teeny bit sinister. Yep. Walking about these parts of the nest felt decidedly uncomfortable at times, although almost as though we were being watched. A suspicious-looking man was poking about in one wrecked and abandoned facility, part that looks closed off to the public. I have no idea what he was doing or how he got there, but he definitely didn't arrive or depart on the same boat as we did. Vacated after 1971. From 1968 until it was shut down in 1973, an Anglo-American project named Cobra Mist, that's it, Cobra Mist, occupied a large area of the northern edge of the nest. This involved a top-secret over-horizon backscatter, no idea what that is either, radar called System 441 Alpha. It was extremely expensive and apparently plagued by severe noise interference from an unknown source from its inception, which ultimately led to its premature closure. The buildings were then allegedly used to house radio transmitters for the BBC World Service. We're pretty sure that was actually true. And that was shut down and then taken over by another BBC, then shut down, then taken over by a private radio station, which is what it's actually being used for now. That's those big fucking transmitting towers that we saw up there from the 1930s. But apparently no longer does so. Frankly, who knows what went on at Orford Ness? Well, that's the problem. There's got to be some information. I would love to see a schedule or a proper ordnance map showing all the buildings are, what they did, sections of them. Someone's got this somewhere, and I can't believe it's... still being held. Why would it still be held? That is the part of the thrill of going there. It is certainly not for the average visitor, not your average visitor experience. There is no cozy cafe at the start. The experience begins as you wait for the Kisa. Yeah. Inevitably, there are stories ranging from UFOs to the something tale of Nazi invasion. Yeah, that's a load of rubbish. So I'm not going to get into that. Okay. From 1967 till 1985, bomb disposal teams worked to clear the site of unexploded ordnance. It is still not judged safe to wander off the designated routes. Cool. And this might also damage some of the delicate habitats. Of course, the National Trust acquired Orford Ness off the MOD in 1993 and welcomed its first inquisitive visitors in 1995. It has undertaken a massive amount of work to conserve and restore the environment. Clearly an ongoing process. Grazing has been reintroduced, deep sea rod fishing, blah 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 blah. Stuff about nature. Orford Ness is designated site of special scientific interest, nature, And that's the end of it. So first, massive kudos to the guy that did this. Have I got a name? Name. I can't see any obvious name. Let me know if I'm being dim, which is... Well, you can see the site up there anyway, so... I'm giving him a shout out there. So that's pretty awesome. So like I said, I'd love to try and... If anyone's out there that have some information on this, or any stories or anything, that would be cool. And I could do some prep work before I went there, and then I would know exactly what to look for, and then I could kind of piece it all together with the cameras and do a kind of final... you know, like the story of what actually went on there, because like I said, no one actually seems to know at the time. Right, I don't think I can keep going any further without repeating myself, so I hope that's a nice little taster until we actually get to go in there. Tomorrow we'll go and have a look at the world's first radar site, although apparently it was technically here, which is cool. You probably didn't enjoy that, but I hope it was interesting nonetheless, because it certainly was for me, and I'll see you later.